Imagine tens of thousands of young people streaming into the heart of Kathmandu. Not for a festival, not for a concert, but because a single flashed image of privilege went viral and lit a fuse under a nation. Within days, Parliament was burning. The Prime Minister resigned.
The Prime Minister of Nepal has resigned as deadly protests continue across the country.
We'll start in Nepal, where Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli has resigned after police killed 19 people.
And streets that usually hum with life stood empty beneath curfews. This is not a movie, this is Nepal in 2025, and the world is watching as a Gen Z uprising forces a reckoning over corruption, social media control, and who really owns the future.
Today I stand here with a dream of building a new Nepal. We are trapped by the selfish games of political parties. Corruption has woven a web that is extinguishing the light of our futures.
The whole of Parliament is on fire. People are dancing. None of it is left, look at it! The whole building is burned through! Yeah! People holding Nepali flags on some of the fire engines! Yeah! We want justice! We want justice!
And its future is in our hands. Jai Yuva! Jai Nepal!
We begin by setting the scene. For years, Nepal's politics have been messy. Coalition governments, factional fights, and accusations that elites siphoned opportunity while ordinary people struggled. But what changed in September 2025 was how those frustrations found a signal amplifier. Young activists used short videos, memes, and viral posts to turn private outrage into public action. What started as protests over a government-imposed clampdown on social media quickly broadened into a broader anti-corruption movement, and then into mass street demonstrations demanding systemic change. The speed and scale shocked political analysts. Tactics learned online translated into bodies on the streets. The protest's human cost is stark and measurable. Hospitals reported scores killed and more than 1,000 injured as security forces confronted demonstrators. Human Rights Watch called for impartial investigations after police and armed units used live ammunition against crowds, a move that many observers say escalated tensions and international concern. Families mourned on sidewalks, and journalists struggled to get accurate numbers in the fog of unrest, numbers that keep changing day by day. These are not abstract statistics. Each figure represents a life interrupted, a community shaken. Political fallout arrived faster than many expected. Prime Minister KP Sharma Oli, facing the collapse of order and mounting public fury, stepped down as the crisis escalated and demonstrators breached and set fire to the parliamentary complex. In the vacuum, protesters floated unlikely names, among them a former Chief Justice, who some activists proposed as an interim, non-partisan steward to navigate the immediate crisis. Political parties scrambled, resignations rippled through cabinets, and the delicate institutions that hold modern Nepal together were suddenly on trial. Why did ordinary Nepalis, especially young people, risk so much? The proximate triggers included the social media ban and shocking visuals of elite consumption, images that cut deep in a country where many struggle for stable work and basic services. But the grievances run deeper. They are rooted in a sense that decades of political promises produced little relief. Weak transparency, nepotism, and a perception that corruption had become a structural feature rather than an aberration. For Gen Z, who grew up connected and comparative, those contrasts are unbearable. The internet made the disparity impossible to ignore and easier to mobilize around. The protests also reveal a new kind of leaderless movement. Unlike older movements organized primarily through political parties or unions, this wave has been decentralized. Youth collectives, students, grassroots NGOs, and viral digital campaigns formed a shifting constellation of organizers. This decentralized model made the movement resilient. There was no single head to arrest or a single office to close. But it also meant strategies and demands varied, sometimes clashing with each other and complicating negotiations with state actors. That structure can be both the movement's strength and its weakness. Escalation took forms that stunned the nation. Offices and homes of political figures, symbols of state power, and even luxury hotels were attacked in some locations. Protest leaders disavowed arson and looting, blaming infiltrators and opportunists who exploited chaos. Whether those actions were planned by fringe elements or emerged spontaneously in a high-tension environment, the violence pushed the crisis from political drama into security emergency, with severe implications for Nepal's key industries, above all, tourism. Reports indicated that pilgrimages and international travel plans were affected almost immediately, compounding economic risk for a country that depends heavily on foreign visitors. Regional dynamics cannot be ignored. Nepal sits between giants, and instability spills across borders. Indian officials watched with alarm as cross-border security concerns grew, particularly as reports surfaced about large numbers of prisoners escaping amid the chaos, an episode that added another layer of urgency to diplomatic and policing conversations in the neighborhood. The geopolitical reverberations underscore how domestic unrest can cascade into wider regional friction, complicating any straightforward path to calm. What are the protesters demanding now? Their list is a mix of immediate and systemic asks: lifting restrictions on social media, independent investigations into killings, resignations and accountability for those accused of corruption, constitutional or electoral reforms to reduce elite capture, and often a call for a temporary neutral administration to oversee reforms. The diversity of demands reflects both the movement's plural nature and the enormity of the institutional fixes many activists insist are necessary. Whether those demands translate into policy depends on negotiations that have barely begun. So what does a realistic path forward look like? First, an independent, credible inquiry into the shootings and deaths is essential to restore any trust. Human rights groups and international observers have urged transparency. Without it, grievances will fester and cycles of retaliation become likely. Second, a political compromise, perhaps in the form of a neutral caretaker administration, as some protesters suggested, could buy time for structural reforms. Third, immediate measures to de-escalate, like lifting blanket internet bans and opening dialogue channels with youth organizations, could reduce the friction that fuels daily confrontation. None of these steps are easy. Each requires political will from actors who may benefit from the status quo. Finally, we must ask what this means for the future. If reforms succeed, Nepal could emerge stronger, with improved accountability, more inclusive politics, and institutions that better reflect the aspirations of a connected generation. If not, the unrest could calcify into longer-term instability with economic and humanitarian costs. Perhaps the most profound takeaway is how youth movements, amplified by digital networks, can now impose immediate pressure on entrenched systems. For small, diverse countries like Nepal, the combination of viral outrage and street mobilization is a potent force that established institutions must learn to engage with rather than suppress. As we close this chapter of the story, remember that beyond the cameras and headlines are Nepalis who want the same things people everywhere want: safety, opportunity, dignity, and a government that delivers basic fairness. The choices made in the coming weeks will determine whether those hopes are met or deferred. For viewers who want to follow developments, watch trusted news outlets and human rights organizations, and listen to Nepali voices on the ground. This moment is raw, dangerous, and full of possibility. History in motion, shaped by a generation that refused to be ignored. End with a line that echoes the hook but looks forward. When a single viral image can set a nation ablaze, the question is no longer whether young people can be heard, it's whether institutions can change fast enough to answer what they're asking. Sources and further reading: Reuters, Al Jazeera, Human Rights Watch, NDTV, and contemporaneous reporting compiled on public timelines and news feeds.